Hey there, everyone. I just wanted to chat with you real quick before the official GNN podcast gets started about some news that broke today, or yesterday as you're listening to this, and Charles will be on momentarily to give his little side of it. Bethesda has announced a season pass. Is basically what I think of it. Season passes are toxic to the games industry. They're a contrivance by games publishers to get their hands on your money before you even had the opportunity to figure out what you're actually getting. In the case of Bethesda, they don't even know what sort of downloadable content they're going to be offering. They have no idea. Just, it'll be worth it. That is a lot of blind faith to be asking from consumers and gamers, and I personally never think season passes are a good investment. Like, do not give your money away on a nebulous promise. When you do that, you're sending a message to game publishers that these practices work, that you support them, and that you'll continue to support them. And that's how we end up getting things like Deus Ex's augment your pre-order nonsense. Anyway, we're gonna talk about this more next week. Here's Charles' thoughts on the matter, and on with the show.
Thank you, Austin, for those amazingly insightful comments. I was delighted to hear them. And now for my own insights. Bethesda's announcement has three key pieces. One is that there will be free updates for the game, and this I don't think is a surprise to anyone. With Skyrim, they had a bunch of little mini updates that added in a bunch of cool features, not the least of which was the legendary difficulty mode. And Bethesda has also said that the GECK is coming early 2016, which is what they've implied was going to happen in the past, so we're not really surprised to hear that the GECK is coming in 2016. And I also don't think we should interpret this as meaning it's going to show up January 2nd, 2016. And the only quantifiable information that comes with this announcement is the $30 price tag for the season pass. And they've also said that the total value of all the DLC will be at least $40, but of course players will find it very subjective as to what a $40 value is. There have been a lot of DLC packs for different games where you pay $1.99 to get something that most players don't really want. It's not worth $1.99 even if it has a $1.99 price tag. And then there are DLC packs that are larger and more elaborate that go for $15, but to most players, they're not really worth the $15 price tag. Hello everyone, and welcome to GNN, a weekly Fallout-themed podcast brought to you by Shoddycast, makers of Hidden History and The Storyteller, a Fallout lore series. I'm your host, Charles Battersby, and with me is my co-host,
Austin Horrigan. And with us today is Matty of Mr. Matty Plays, or Matholomew.
He's a Fallout podcaster in his own right and a fan of some sort of anime, if you could clarify.
I am a lover of story-driven hentai. It's my favorite thing to do in my spare time. If you didn't know, now you do. You probably think I'm a freak, but it's all right. Don't worry about it. Just accept it. Just roll with it.
And tell us a little bit about your podcast that is Fallout-themed.
Yeah, I run the Ham Radio podcast with my good friend Lone and my best friend in real life, Noah, and it's basically much like this, where we just talk about Bethesda, everything that kind of goes on. We try to get as many guests, much like this podcast as well, so it's very similar in that sense. We run a couple of segments like the Bethesda Spotlight, what we're playing, stuff like that, but it's mainly, like I said, Bethesda focused, so that's that. Charles has actually been on it, in case you guys didn't know, which was a great time. That was one of my favorite podcasts. That was so fun.
Aw, shucks.
It's like 6 of our podcasts, which means it's like 6 times as awesome.
All right, so we're going to have more with Matty about his podcast in a few minutes, but first let's talk about some Fallout news that's arrived recently. So a lot of us that liked Fallout 3 are really sad to hear that Three Dog is not returning to Fallout 4. So guys, Fallout 4 is supposed to occur at about the same time as Fallout 3, and we know that Three Dog was doing his radio station in the Capital Wasteland for several years leading up to Fallout 3, and presumably for years after. So is it really such a big surprise that Three Dog didn't pack up and head to Boston for a vacation during the events of Fallout 4?
I feel like he wasn't going to be a person you could meet, but I figured that GNR would expand in some sense where like he would cover more of the wasteland. Like they just explain it in like a quick conversation and then he'd somehow be in the game. It's just like another optional radio. To my surprise though, what I was kind of taken back by is how many people were actually happy he's not in the game. I love Three Dog, but when I looked at the comments when I covered this originally, a lot of people were like really happy that Three Dog wasn't in this game.
I think whenever like there's like a character that's particular, I was surprised. I had the same feeling like when Brian Delaney talked about Moira, and everyone was like, "Oh, Moira's here now." I was like, "Oh, I kind of liked Moira."
I'm the same. Yeah, I like Moira.
I was kind of thinking there'd be like, he would just put up like an extra dish that he stole from another Sputnik type satellite, somewhere to boost the signal into the Boston area. I mean, the AM signal can make it that far, actually. If you look at the range, it's actually Boston is well within the range of an AM radio, but alas.
And if angry fans send out tweets and telegrams and letters demanding that Three Dog be in this game, do you think it's reasonable that Bethesda will break down and make like a DLC pack where you can add in Three Dog?
Oh, man. I mean, a lot of people were like, oh, they'll just add him in DLC and stuff. I'm like, I don't see that happening at all. What I see happening, and my initial prediction from the start was that he'll get modded in. Everyone loves mods. Console mods are a thing. Everyone will have Three Dog. It's just going to have to wait like an extra couple of months.
Well, the thing is that Eric Todd Dellums is really... he's really receptive to his fans, and he's really accessible. And in fact, he actually did some work with the Shoddycast Storyteller mod, and he was in I guess technically 2 episodes of this Fallout Storyteller, and actually did unique voice work for it, and it wasn't that impossible to get a hold of him. So it just, if the money appears or someone convinces him with an eloquent speech.
Yeah, because the challenge for the mod is that in Fallout 3, obviously, Three Dog comments on what karma choices you make. And so in Fallout 4, when the game is most likely going to be a lot bigger, you have to make a line for each one of those happenings for each karma level. It's going to be crazy. So whoever, and obviously you need a lot of knowledge on the game itself. So a couple of months should give people that time, but still there's things you can miss. So it'll be interesting to see how that mod goes down.
All right, so now all these extra lines we're talking about, Bethesda has also announced that there are 111,000 lines of dialogue. So first, is this some kind of conspiracy theory where they whittled down or bumped up the dialogue just so it's 111?
Oh my god. I totally missed that. That's great.
Or maybe it was originally 75,000 words, and they're like, if we add in 36,000 more lines of dialogue, we'll have this nice symbolic binary number that thematically links with the vault.
Quick, record 30,000 more yeses and hays.
I just find it shocking because that's, I think Skyrim had 60,000, so this is almost double the size of Skyrim. That's, in my opinion, I think that's completely insane. I don't know how much of Skyrim you guys played, but obviously...
Quite a bit.
Yeah, all right. So just how damn huge this game is. So it was pretty shocking when I saw that. But you have to take into account the voice protagonists. They definitely take up a big chunk of the lines.
That's what I was wondering. I'm like, when they say 111,000 lines, are they talking about recorded lines of dialogue, or when they're comparing that to Fallout or Skyrim, are they counting things that the protagonist says as a line, even though it's unspoken? Because that actually makes a number a little bit less impressive. Because if
with 2 voice actors doing it, they're doubling up on everything that the voice every line of recorded dialogue means. There's 2 people saying, "Hey there" every time.
Yeah, it's definitely when you break down the number, when you take into account that there's a dozen companions you can get, and obviously you can romance them. They're going to have their own quest lines, most likely, if I'm correct on that part. You take into account, like I said, the voice protagonist, and when you actually dice it up, it makes more sense why there's so many lines of dialogue. where like when you just see it in plain text, like 111,000 lines of dialogue, you're like, holy crap, that's insane.
You know, going with the 111,000 like conspiracy theory, when we had Kal-El on here, he said, and he was shooting from the hip on what the number was, so I mean, take that with a grain of salt, but he said 170,000.
Oh my God.
And so part of me wonders if like it is like they just picked 111,000 and they're like, no one's ever gonna count. Let's just say 111,000 because it's a nice number, and no one's ever gonna look and count twice.
Oh, well, now, speaking of that, what percentage of players do you think are going to actually hear all of this dialogue? Presumably to get it, you'll need to play male protagonist, female protagonist, good karma, negative karma, and have 4 run-throughs with everything you can do in the game in order to hear all this stuff.
See, for me, it's going to take me forever because my first run through is one where I just literally kill every single person I see. So they're like, "How you doing?" I'm like, "Blam!" in the face. So it's going to take me a little longer.
I definitely want to see how that works in Fallout 4, where they said, like, Todd Howard said during E3, how you could just, like, step back and just shoot someone in the face, like, mid-conversation. I want to do that so bad. Just mid-sentence, I just pull out and I'm like, screw this guy, and I just blow his head off, like... It's gonna be one of the best feelings ever.
It's like a Let's Player's dream. You can just like comedically milk the. It's like having a renegade interrupt option for Mass Effect for every single conversation.
Just smack him in the face. Yeah.
Punch the news reporter in the face.
I hope you don't have a subplot, pal. Alright, so that's about all the news that we've had right now, but of course, if you're looking for more news in the future, there's a certain podcaster who brings up a quick news bite about everything related to Fallout 4, and we have him with us here today. Matty, tell us about your channel.
Alright, here we go. Just gonna rub my hands together like I'm really here to spit something at you guys. Alright, if I were to break down my channel, I'd say that I'm essentially a Fallout-focused channel, but I like to sprinkle in like different games here and there. So I like to do a little Battlefront here and there. I like to do a little Mafia here and there. It's a very weird mixture of games. But yeah, I like to focus mainly on Fallout because that's a game that I've been covering since 2012 now. And so I've covered the entire journey there. And, I document like almost literally every little happening when this game was a rumor up until now when it's real. And that's kind of how I've gained my following in a sense. But it's built out and branched out and do a lot of different things from Fallout, which is really exciting. But yeah, that's essentially what I'd say my channel is.
All right, so why are you so obsessed with this game? What is it about Fallout that just makes you compelled to get on the microphone and talk about it every time we learn, the dog's going to be able to cock one of his ears or, you can...
It's tough it's always been one of my favorite franchises. A quick story about it is because also of the emotional attachment I have to it in a sense where I originally hated Fallout 3. That was my first Fallout game like many others. Yeah, I originally hated it. I bought a 360 for it because Noah, one of my podcast hosts, he convinced me to buy a 360 just for this game. And I bought it and I'm like, this is awful. And so I didn't play it for a year. Then the IGN dropped their Game of the Year Fallout 3 review. And I looked at that and I just picked it back up, fell in love. Played New Vegas, ironically hated that as well. So it's like a weird relationship I have with Fallout where I come back and re-enjoy it like many years later. But I don't think that'll happen for Fallout 4. But yeah, it's always just been kind of like an attachment. It's been a game that just as I realized also when I started covering Fallout that I'm just a giant fan of Bethesda Game Studios. I haven't played a single game of theirs that I haven't put hundreds of hours in. Like, that's always an absurd amount of time. So, I just love it to death. So that's mainly why. It's nothing like crazy, but yeah.
I didn't like New Vegas either when I first played it. I was like, I don't want to be a cowboy.
That's the funny thing. I love it now. I feel it's aged so much better than Fallout 3. Fallout 3 is still my favorite, but New Vegas, when it comes to choice, character builds, what you can do in the story, it's so much more well structured, and it's more impressive that they did that in like a year and I think 8 months or something like that.
Did you say that Fallout 3 is still your favorite of the two of them?
Yeah.
Our machinima artist Tommy has that same opinion, and he like feels so much guilt about it.
That's the thing. Yeah, you kind of feel guilt about it because now I look at New Vegas, and especially from a modding perspective as well, it's such a superior game in my opinion. But it's just like I feel like for all the time and enjoyment I got out of Fallout 3, that has to remain my favorite one. Provided Fallout 4 doesn't blow it out of the water. But for now, it'll remain Fallout 3.
All right, so now a recent game that's not Fallout, but it's kind of Fallout-y, is Mad Max. So you've had some time, some hands-on with this. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I beat the game. I put a lot of time into it, and it's hard to say what this game exactly is, because it's, like I said in my review of it, it's essentially like you have this Assassin's Creed-esque guilty pleasure. You pick it up and it's like you see these very bland objectives, but it's like that completionist attitude that motivates you, because once you do all these things, you start unlocking stuff for the magnum opus, the car you drive, or for Max himself, and you see the fruits of your upgrade instantly, so it's like worth it. It's kind of a grind to get to that part, but overall, it's a fun time, but it's hard to say whether or not you should spend $60 on it. If you're like I said in my video, a Fallout fan, and you're just looking for like a little wasteland fix to kind of get you through to Fallout 4, then yeah, maybe it's worth your time to pick up. But it's a very niche game, I'd say, because other than that, if you're not a completionist or like a post-apocalyptic fan, it probably won't appeal to you and just look like a repetitive game on the outside.
Yeah, I very much enjoyed this, and I think that my response to it would have been a lot worse if I hadn't stuck with the main storyline and played through to the end. Because there's a couple of big missions at the end where it's not a spoiler to say this, but one of the big missions is you're chasing down this huge convoy of vehicles, just like in a Mad Max game. It's like, the climax of Road Warrior or of Fury Road, and you're chasing, down this huge vehicle, you're blasting through the guard vehicles alongside, and when that moment came, I was like, wow, this really is, a serious Mad Max storyline. And then after you handle that little quest, I won't give any spoilers, but there's a little epilogue where you have one final boss battle that you fight. And that ends up introducing something back to the game that I didn't think we'd be able to play. And, the result of that was, it really felt like this was a distinctly Mad Max adventure, and something that had story pacing that, once you ignore all the grinding, the story itself was something that it felt like a Mad Max movie.
Absolutely. It does the franchise justice. That's one thing that's definitely worth mentioning. It's a good time, especially, when you're in the car and you're driving around, that's the best part. And I don't know if you agree, but I felt like it took up until kind of like the 60% mark of the story. I don't know how you'd gauge that, but it about halfway through for the story to get really interesting, because it kind of felt like you were kind of just going stronghold to stronghold and trying to get people's help and chasing that never-ending quest to the final area that I don't want to say the name of, but and then once you finally get there, it's then the story kind of really opens up in that ending sequence, and it's awesome at the end.
And one thing, because Fallout is so heavily inspired by the Mad Max titles, there are a lot of similarities. And one of the things that disappointed me about Mad Max, the game, is the way that they used the dog.
Oh, yeah, I know. Because you could only have them in the buggies, and the buggies did nothing in combat, so you hardly got to use the dog.
Yeah, so, the iconic shot of Max or the Vault Dweller walking down the road with, their dog at their side, you don't get that in this game. You get a couple of cutscenes with the dog, and the rest of the time the dog, who has a limp, has to stay in a special car. And it's not like your main car. You've got to have a special little buggy that the dog is in. And the only missions you can do on that are these mine sniffer missions where you drive around in big circles until the dog barks because they smelled a mine. And then you go disarm it, and that's all there is to it. So for Fallout fans, that's a huge letdown. The rest of the game, you have this sidekick that you're deliberately not supposed to like, a hunchback with a psychosexual religious fetish for cars.
And now we're gonna head into our Ask a Lore Nut segment, where you, the audience, our beautiful audience, ask us little lore questions, and we do our best to answer them. And this week, it's mostly Charles answering them because he has the knowledge that extends beyond Fallout wikis.
So Grumio on Twitter, at WatsonEvan, writes, where do each generation of Vault Dwellers get their new suits? Some vaults operated 200 plus years. Alright, so there is actually something in the Fallout Bible and a cut concept from Van Buren that explains this. So in the vaults, there's a certain number of people that were supposed to have lived there, and presumably everybody doesn't get one jumpsuit and just wear it for the rest of their life, so they have to come from somewhere. And the Fallout Bible references Vault 70, which was one of the evil experiments to see how people would respond to bizarre circumstances. And this vault was designed to have a bunch of religious fanatics who would be nudists after 6 months. So there's a reference to, quote, jumpsuit extruders, which were designed to malfunction after 6 months in that vault. And the experiment would be that they take a group of people who are very prudish and then ensure that after about 6 months, they're stuck as they're naked for the remaining 9.5 years that the vault is there. And Vault 70 was first just, I guess, Chris Avallone's joke in the Fallout Bible, and then when Van Buren rolled around, they took that idea and refined it a little more. So a cut concept for Van Buren was going to be that they were going to be Mormons who were stuck in the Vault 70 as a bunch of nudists. And unfortunately, Van Buren never showed up, and when they ended up doing Fallout New Vegas, there was a lot of Mormon references, but they didn't actually put Vault 70 in or address this.
I think what I like about this question is it just hits on something that I never thought of, and now after that question is asked, I'm asking all sorts of questions in my head about the vaults. It's like, well, where do they get the raw materials? How do they even wash their clothes? Like, I don't even, like, do they just have a big storeroom somewhere where they just have, like, 200 years worth of, like, detergent just sitting back there?
Well, that's something that in Fallout 3, in Vault 101, by the time our protagonist is growing up, we do see things like, a little spring to make, the BB gun work. You have to steal that from somebody's switchblade. And, there's all these little references that the vaults that were closed for a long time, stuff starts to wear out and run dry and break. And so the jumpsuit extruders, there were other vault descriptions that talk about, food manufacturers that produce different kinds of gruel. And so the premise that the developers are working with is that Vault Tech did have machines that would recycle or produce a large supply of raw materials, depending on how long you're going to be in the vault.
Very interesting. Like Austin said, I didn't even think of that. Why would someone consider that? But, it brings up a lot of other questions.
Did they collect the farts and use them for power in some way?
Well, I think there is a reference that the water purification chip does recycle urine, and that's where some of the vaults are getting their water supply from. Raw Saw Sage on Twitter, at DC Cantel, writes, "What can you tell me about the founding/exploits of the Circle of Steel?" So the Circle of Steel is referenced in Fallout New Vegas. If you listen to the audio tapes that are left behind by Christine Royce, and if you talk to her in Dead Money, she will mention that she's part of this organization called the Circle of Steel, which is a heretofore unmentioned subgroup of the Brotherhood of Steel, and you only hear about it in these just couple of little bits of DLC stuff in New Vegas. But the concept behind it was actually developed again for Van Buren. That's the canceled Fallout 3 that they're working on before the real Fallout 3 came. And so the Circle of Steel was originally going to be a group of stealth operatives that worked for the Brotherhood of Steel. And the deal is, if you use Stealth Boy technology for a long time, you go crazy. So in Van Buren, you were going to meet this group of crazy, paranoid stealth assassins that were working for the Brotherhood of Steel. And unfortunately, that never happened, but for New Vegas, they brought back the basic concept of that the Circle of Steel was this rogue assassination group, and Christine was one of them. She was the sniper sent out to kill Father Elijah after he disappeared in the events leading up to New Vegas. And so if you compile all of this information together, you find only a very little bit of information, but it seems like the concept behind it was that at some point in the recent past, someone in the Brotherhood decided that we need like a wet works assassination bureau that's going to go out and do all the dirty work for the Brotherhood and use the stealth technology that we don't like. And one operative was Christine Royce. And this may be something that they'd hope to do in the next Fallout game and elaborate on it, because it only showed up in the DLC packs. All right, so we have a perfectly reasonable speculation this week. Austin, tell us about this one.
All right, this is from at Tristan0, and he just says, "You find A321," which is the Android code name for Harkness from the Replicated Man quest in Fallout 3. I think that is very likely. At the very least, they're gonna have tons of references to him, I think. Though I actually wouldn't be surprised if he was there and part of a major plot to like unseat the Institute in some way.
All right, now we've talked about the Replicated Man on previous installments of the podcast, and one of the things that drives me crazy about it is early in the mission, you're contacted by someone that says, "Here, take this android part to the guy that gave you the quest." And that'll fool him into thinking the android's dead. And so right away, as soon as you get this quest, someone says, "Oh, here's the thing, go take it to the guy," and you're done the quest. And if you do that, you are cut off from the overwhelming majority of this quest line. I think that a lot of people listening don't know anything about Harkness or Zimmer or, A321. Guys, tell us a little bit about how this mission would play out if you don't do as you're told.
Well, the long way is that you kind of start finding little hints of their. You can start it one of two ways: either talking directly to this guy Zimmer in Rivet City, basically the first time you go there, part of the main quest, or you start finding little snippets of information about an android strewn throughout the wasteland, and you're supposed to. It's been a while since I've done it, but there's a way you end up. You go through the quest, you end up finding out that the android is hanging out in Rivet City. And then you find out the identity of this person. I don't know. Should I say the whole quest? Because I remember you have to go to this.
It's a 7-year-old game, so
that's
I
true.
think you'll be all right.
Play the game if you don't want. But turn the podcast off now and go play Fallout 3. You can do the quest in like 40 minutes. All right, so we're back to it. You go to this like abandoned section of the boat that Rivet City is, and you talk to this guy who's like a mad super genius who just like lives by himself. Out there, and he had changed the face of the android and wiped his memories, and then he tells you who it was. It is Harkness. He's like the head of security at Rivet City, and then you have the option of either convincing him to go back with Zimmer, who is sent there with his own android, basically a Blade Runner, to hunt him down. Or you can convince him to kill Zimmer, or you can kill Zimmer yourself. There's a few different ways you can resolve it, and there's like a best way where you like tell Zimmer who it is, get like an upgrade from Zimmer, like a cyborg implant, and then you shoot Zimmer, and then you get Harkness's awesome plasma rifle, which I believe is the best plasma rifle in the game. Anyway, and then you get some details on how androids actually work, whereas androids are not like. This is where people kind of fell apart with the main character of Fallout 4 is an android theory. They're like, well, how can he do this if he's a robot? Well, androids in the Fallout universe aren't like Protectrons, where they're just like or Terminators with flesh over robot parts. They're more like the Blade Runner replicants, where they have, fleshy bits and emotions and thoughts and feelings, and they cut themselves while shaving, which I believe is something that Harkness even says. He's like, I cut myself shaving. I can't be a robot. So it's like, you are a robot. You're an unexplained robot.
And depending on... Oh, sorry, you were about to say?
I was just going to interject that on the topic of returning characters, mainly from that quest line. A lot of characters from Fallout 3 could end up making their way back into Fallout 4. I know Dr. Lee said once that she plans on going to the Commonwealth at the end of Fallout 3. Obviously, Harkness has that chance. Dr. Zimmer is almost a sure bet, I want to say, because they brought his voice actor back. He was the Vault Tech guy that we heard in the doorway at the beginning of the E3 demo.
I was trying to figure out where I knew his voice from.
Yeah, same exact voice actor. So I was like, that's very peculiar in a game that involves the Institute. So I think there's a high chance that will return. And in terms of returning rare weapons, Bethesda's done that in the past. I believe in Oblivion, one of the rare weapons that you could get was Chillrend. And I know that you could get that in a house for a Thieves Guild mission, I believe it was, in Skyrim. So it wouldn't surprise me if they found a way to kind of bring back a rare weapon, just kind of because Bethesda's done that before.
I think like on several of my playthroughs, I tried to do the mission right and always screwed up because I've got this nice woman saying, hey, look, if you really want to help these androids, give this thing to the guy. And that's
I know,
it.
everyone pressures you to do not the whole quest. Like, the game emotionally de-incentivizes you to do the quest properly.
Now, one of the things that we were talking about here is the canonical ending of Fallout 3. So, we don't really know what officially happened. Most of Fallout 2, there is no official end to it. Most of Fallout 3 was not referenced in New Vegas. And, New Vegas, there's no hint so far about the official ending. So when I'm faced with a big franchise like this, I tend to assume that the developers are going to make the official ending all the good karma choices. That you don't... Yeah, it's like you don't want to say, well, Mass Effect 3, it's about this guy that runs around punching reporters and, committing genocide of alien lizard people. And depending on what you do in, Mass Effect, your Commander Shepard can be an awful person. And with Fallout, yes, a renegade. And so, with Fallout 3, part of me thinks that, well, all the good karma choices are going to be the official endings. But then I'm thinking a more complex story would be that, well, maybe, the Chosen One or the Courier or the Lone Wanderer didn't do things as well as we would have liked them to do. And that just keeps the world from being this paradise, that in order to have Fallout 4 be, a world that needs saving, the player needs to have officially screwed up a couple of things. So what do you guys think about using karma-related choices for canonical endings?
I was thinking about what I thought of more than anything was the way that Oblivion handled Morrowind, which was to basically, like, there's almost no mention of the events of Morrowind in Oblivion, which is funny because Oblivion happens just like a year or two after. But they're just like, yeah, the Nerevarine just went off the Akaviri, I think, yeah. And so they don't really talk about it, and that kind of seems to be the status quo for Bethesda. They're like, yeah, the past game happened. I expect what's gonna happen. They're gonna be like, yeah, something about a water purifier and a giant robot, but yeah, that's it. Like, I'm betting they just will they'll try to go as far away from saying anything concrete as possible.
And then there's
what I think.
If they don't make a decision, there's the issue of, did the Enclave wipe out the Brotherhood of Steel, thereby annihilating all resistance? Or was the Enclave finally defeated? And so there is a very strict karma-based choice on whether or not that huge event happened.
Yeah, absolutely, because you can destroy Adam's Air Force Base, you can destroy the Brotherhood of Steel, at the end of Broken Steel, so there's a lot of choices. I'd imagine... obviously there's multiple factions of the Brotherhood of Steel as well, so it's really up in the air, because I was going to say, you see the Brotherhood of Steel in Fallout 4, but you don't know if they're like the Midwest, like a lot of people have been speculating. Are they Lions Brotherhood moving into new territory? What could this new Brotherhood of Steel faction be?
I have a theory that if we see the Enclave, they're not going to be as dastardly evil as they were in the past.
Hope not. It's like, I don't know if I'm the only Fallout fan, but they are in every game, always manipulating the FEV, trying to do something to ruin
stop
the world.
Being stupid.
It's like, you've lost. Stop.
Okay, we have one final irresponsible speculation from @WeAreTheDark. Austin, do you want to read this in your finest British accent?
That was not part of the agreement.
Okay. Then
we'll
no
try.
British accent. Okay.
I'm from England. No, that's not it. Hold on. I'm from England, where instead of baseball, we play. That is definitely Irish. Let me try again. I'm from England, where instead of baseball, we play something called cricket. That's that's like
weird.
I think I'm gonna try Midwestern American accent. Let me see if I can do it. I'm from England. Yeah, I got it. Where instead of baseball, we play something called cricket, which is deathly boring. Following on from the speculation that baseball will feature in the game, what do you think of the idea of a DLC or quest inspired by the film Field of Dreams? The Wanderer is tasked with building a baseball park to bring back the restless spirit of some famous old baseball player. If you build it, he will come, and reward the player with a kind of super sledge-inspired baseball bat at the quest's conclusion. That's not irresponsible, that's amazing!
I wholeheartedly agree. There's the whole crafting system that you're going to have in Fallout 4, so why not build an entire fully functional baseball stadium out of the scrap that you acquire?
It's like they had the Dunwich building, so there's like some established like metaphysical creatures out there, so it'll be like the good version of that.
Oh, and in Fallout 2, there is in fact a ghost where you meet a real ghost and have to put her bones to rest. And there's no science fiction twist ever applied to that, so as far as we know, that's a canonical ghost. So I think this Field of Dreams quest is definitely going to be in the game. Matty?
You can invite Diamond City over to play a couple of rounds of baseball, maybe, you know? Side quest. Expand upon it.
Yeah, so I will go that this is not an irresponsible speculation. One of the janitors at Bethesda actually told me they're doing something like this. So I think We Are the Dark is dead right about this speculation.
Also, if you couple that with a tweet I saw from Pete Hines, he posted a picture of a dog he took home from a shelter, and I saw a baseball lying in the background of this photo, and I get the feeling that this connects to Bethesda adding a customizable baseball stadium in Fallout 4. So definitely going to happen.
It's a secret coded message.
All right, so that's the end of our irresponsible speculations. Matty, what do you have coming up in the future?
Right now, I've been thinking about just doing a couple of playthroughs. There's not much going on in the Fallout community lately. I'm really looking forward to the Fallout Anthology. I want to unbox that. But in the terms of long-term project, I usually keep those under wraps. But I announced most of my series ideas for before Fallout 4 on a recent video I uploaded today. We're recording this on Tuesday. So if anyone who's curious about my future content plans wants to check that out, they can. But the short version is Fallout Dust Breach through Fallout 3 Road to Platinum, where I'm going to actually try to get the Platinum Trophy in Fallout 3. That's going to be hell. What else is there? The Lore series. I'm forgetting the rest. Oh my god. Well, regardless, there's a 15-minute ramble on my channel. If you are really that desperately curious about my channel, you can, by all means, check that out.
All right, that brings us to the end of today's show. We'd like to thank Matty for joining us.
Of course. Thank you guys so much for having me. This is a lot of fun.
And if people want to see more of you, tell us about your Twitter handle, your YouTube channel. Where else can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at G27status. You can find me on YouTube, Mr. Matty Plays, and on Instagram, if you like to see my face, Mr. Matty Plays _official.
All right, and you can stalk me online at Charles Battersby with no Y on the end on Twitter, or charlesbattersby.com. Austin, where can people find you online?
People can find me on Twitter at ARHorrigan, and sometimes I'm tweeting from the Shoddycast Twitter stream at Shoddycast.
All right, and remember to join us every week for new episodes of Hidden History, as well as Fallout Lore, The Storyteller, as well as episodes of The Storyteller Elder Scrolls. And
if we get any more shows, you're going to have a real mouthful at the end of every. It'll be like, and this one, and this one, and this one.
And of course, starting this Saturday, there will be new episodes every Saturday morning of Giddy Up Buttercup and the Pony Pals.